afternoon and welcome to today's edition of Cineclub PELíCULA. Every Sunday, we get together with guests to discuss classic Spanish films, and this week we're talking about Los Santos Inocentes, or The Holy Innocents by Mario Camus from 1984. Joining us for this discussion, in alphabetical order, are filmmaker Mike Alcazar. His films include Puti. He has directed many commercials. And he is the author of the graphic novel Patay Kung Patay, which is about zombies in the hacienda. And then Elvert Bañares is a filmmaker and educator, director of the Bakunawa Cinema of the Young. Bakunawa is a mythological creature, right?
Yes.
Yes. And yes, and from Madrid, Marina Díaz, scholar and officer in charge of the cinema section at Instituto Cervantes. Thank you very much for joining us. Yes. And so today we're going to talk about The Holy Innocents, which is based on a novel by Miguel Delibes, which celebrates its centenary this year, no? And so maybe we can start by asking Marina to tell us about the novel on which this movie is based.
Okay, thank you all. I'm very glad to be here with you. Sorry, and
Thank you for speaking to us from Madrid.
Not at all. Delibes is one of our best writers in the second half of the 20th century. And with this book, he reached notably a remarkable success, not only among readers, among Spanish readers, but also about in the academy and in the area of literary criticism. The novel, Los Santos Inocentes, here I have the first edition copy. It's set in the 60s, in the last century, and it talks about the differences, the class differences in the Extremeño land, in a region which is near the south. It's close to Portugal and near the south, and notably the differences between rich people and poor people. These peasants are really radical and really tragic. So in the 80s, when the Socialist Party was in charge was in the government, Pilar Miró, who was also a filmmaker, a female filmmaker, he set a law for trying to make art films and films based on literary origins. And
so adaptations were encouraged.
Sorry.
Adaptations were encouraged by the government.
That's right. Well, Miró has the French film as a model, and she tried to encourage films which were connected with art culture and with literary culture. And Delibes was already a really well-known writer. And with this book, which sorted out, I think 3 or 4 years before the film was made, was like an obvious choice.
Yes, and at the time that the film was made in the 1980s, what was the Spanish film industry like?
Well, we have a really strong, popular and entertainment industry based mostly on comedies, on popular comedies. And this is why, and sexy comedies at that time, you have to think that we were already going out from the Francoism, from a dictatorship, and people want to express themselves, to feel that they were free for having sexual relations, for having choices as political choices. So the popular films were set on that, especially sexy films. There were a huge amount of sexy films at that time. And Miró wanted to change all that. He wanted to back an art industry, a cultural industry that could also give another opportunity to people to know all differences, or to connect. I would say to connect Spanish cinema, sorry, with European cinema.
See.
And this is something that you may probably have seen in the film by Mario Camus.
Right. And I noticed that The Holy Innocents came out in 1984, which reminds me that in the early 80s, social realism was also very prominent in Philippine cinema. Elbert, what do you think of this synchronicity?
Hi, Jessica. Buenas tardes. Magandang hapon.
Magandang hapon.
Reminds me of the film, lots of films actually, because this is an angry film, but it's quiet. Compared to a Filipino film, when we're angry, we're really angry. So
yes,
it reminds
there
me
will
of
be
Sakada.
slapping.
Yeah,
yes.
It reminds me of Sakada, a film by Ben Cervantes, shot in Bacolod, Negros Occidental. And because before, the films were really talking about hacienderos, and
yes.
all the rest are just how do you call them, servants.
Yes.
That's the term.
Tenants, serfs.
Tenants.
Yes.
And it reminds me very well of this film, because even if they have a difference in tone, you can see the similarities in emotions. I like the film because it starts with a train coming in, and then I like it because the first line is un café, meaning I order a coffee for you. Life will become bitter.
Yes.
And
And also, the first name I saw in the station was Zafra. So even if I have no connection to Zafra in Extremadura, I began to feel very guilty.
Yeah, and you see very similar characteristics of Filipinos. Somebody owns the land, somebody's king, somebody's playing God, and here are people trying to follow. And you wonder as a viewer, because I watched this at like 3 a.m., you wonder at that time, why on earth will you just follow? But if you look at how they are in their lives, there's no choice. Even if we say we have a choice.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of choice here, it's a matter of fate. And it's just too bad that, you belong to that kind of situation. I particularly like the scene of the birds, different types of birds for different types of people. It talks about flight, freedom.
And birds are free in a way that people are not.
Yeah.
Yes.
People are not. And you see, the animals are better. I wish I was just a bird during those times. And those owners of the land, they're just emotionless. I cannot believe that the kind of things they do to people, but it comes naturally to them. They don't feel any conscience at all. There was like no...
Yes, because there's a sense of ownership. I own
Yes.
everything in this
Yes.
property, including you and your entire family.
So who cares if you are disabled? Who cares if you have a dysfunction? You have to go with me during the shooting because I want you to be part of it. And any excuse, any form of sickness, is just an excuse for them. There was one scene I really liked, Jessica, when they were eating, and the family were asked to come here to write down their names. That was really...
Oh, that was a particularly
power.
cringe-making scene. Yes.
Yeah.
It's cringe-worthy, and you feel for the people, and then they have to say thank you, and they have to beg for indulgence. They have to, and that scene wherein they have to fall in line because, I have to give you coins, everybody. Please fall in line.
Exactly.
You're very poor. Here is your 1 peso.
No, wait. I'd like to ask Marina. At the time that the action is set, were the tenants paid in money?
I don't think.
Did they get wages? No.
No.
Just the privilege of living there.
Of living there, yes. They
So
pay with
what did they get in exchange for their labor?
Nothing. They were just there. They could live there in their areas, and I think, well, they probably have a little wage for, I suppose, in Christmas or in Easter. This is why the marquis give them money when she comes to have the communion of the little child, of her grandson. He gives them money because this is something extraordinary. This is something exceptional, and this is why she comes to the state to celebrate. So yeah,
Yes.
it was medieval. It was still medieval, and the horrible thing is that it was the 60s in Spain.
And it was still medieval.
Yes, they still live in that kind, and this is why all these things that Albert has just said, no, that this man who's comes from an embassy, an international embassy, and no, you treat them like peasants. They don't even. We teach them how to write, and you know that they only know how to write their own names. So this is horrible.
Yeah.
And,
So
another thing, sorry, is that in that specific moment, the Franco's government was starting to set out a new economy, a capitalist economy. So they wanted to make a new Spain, and this was like a.
So the film is set at the dividing line when the feudal system was starting to move into something closer to the free market. So Mike, you've done a bit of observation and research about haciendas. What do you think of the film? What particular parts struck you?
Well, we're really children of our colonial masters, Spain. Because when the first few minutes, it didn't feel like a foreign film to me. I thought I was watching a Filipino film.
Except for the train.
Except for the train, yes.
Except for the train, yes.
Before I forget, when I was just taking in all the imagery, because I was a little bit confused on the timeline because it was non-linear.
So was I, because I wasn't sure what decade it was in. It could have been 1890. It could have been 1980. Yes.
So I thought, I thought the sun had a twin. So anyway, that kind of resolved itself. But watching it in the small screen and watching how the director was creating also wonderful imagery, the pastoral scenes. I was wondering, wow, this would have been so fantastic in a cinema.
The big screen,
Yes.
Yes.
And to show the contrast between the idyllic scene and then you have the squalor and how rotten the souls of the hacienderos are, but so beautiful the landscapes and so many metaphors nga, like the birds and I was also I love the way he used the handwriting as like a symbol of power. The education.
Yes, because the minute the son alights from the train and goes to the cafe, he starts writing a letter to his sister, and it's a particularly labored process.
But then you understand, and that's when I appreciated it in the end of the intercutting between the past and the present, and now it becomes more powerful. That symbol of learning how to write. It's just something he stick it out of poverty, out of this life. Unfortunately, he had to leave the parents. Unlike Albert, I unfortunately did not see Sakada. I think they re-screened it recently or a couple years ago.
Yeah.
They did. I did not. Yeah. The only other film I remember is Oro Plata, only because of the hacienda setting, but it wasn't much of about the class struggle, but their survival during World War II. But you could see already that there was a hierarchy.
Of course, you could see the hierarchy. Yes.
Yes, and I also was kind of, the times are already depressing, and it really got me more depressed because I think it still happens today.
Oh yeah.
We still have, you're from Iloilo, you should know that. So
Yes.
although there are many plantations that had shut down, as a commercial director, I had one shot in Hacienda Luisita, the famous hacienda of the Aquinos, and we had to find a sacada setting. So okay, and we got real laborers, and we were shocked that they were living. And this is already the time after Cory, I think, time of
So
Ramos.
the 90s, the
90s
2000s.
already, and they were living hand to mouth despite the land reform. We were asking them how much they were getting, and they barely made a living because nobody wanted to import sugar already, and they were closing it down. So it was kind of sad. And
Yes, and
but
it's
I really,
horrifying to think, watching the Holy Innocents, that in many places in the Philippines and in the rest of the world, this still happens. This sort of setup still happens where some people own everything and everyone else has nothing.
I mean, even in the urban setting, you go to the gated communities like Forbes Park, they have a mini a mini hacienda where
Right.
there's a hierarchy, and
Exactly.
the owner gives money, and when there's a big celebration. So it's still, it feels very significant today. I wish that they could rescreen it or send it over here. Well, of course, you can't go out to the cinema, but that's what I wanted to experience when watching the film. Is how I'm sure he really made it a point to make it look beautiful, and then to throw in that contrast of how these people were maltreating, even unconsciously. They're not, you know,
No,
it's
it's
just
just
that
that
they were
you
born
grow
that
up in
way.
that sort of
Yes.
environment where there's a sense of entitlement, and you just feel that anything you want, as in these people are expected to obey your wishes. I just remembered another recent European film that I saw. Has anyone seen Happy as Lazaro by Alice Rohrwacher, which is about a similar setting where it's set in Italy. It's a feudal system, and the tenants are kept away from the current media. And later they realize that feudalism no longer exists, and they become a media sensation because they're lost in time. Here are a bunch of people who don't know that feudalism ended. But going back to Marina, I hope that Extremadura has moved on from this sort of life. What is it like in Extremadura today?
Well, there are still large states, of course, as well as in the south of Spain, but especially in Extremadura, there are some collective ownership of the land in some places. And well, you can see these two systems living together in a way. But well, we still, in those years, agriculture was our main source of, or was one of the most important sources for our economy. That is no longer like that anymore. We now live from the tourism. Imagine what is happening now with the COVID. And we...
Oh, yes. And was this random factoid? Game of Thrones actually shot some sequences in Extremadura, in Zafra, yes.
Yes, we have a lot of shooting of land of lords here in Spain and in the north too. So agriculture is something connected for a lot of people from the past. Now I think that everything is going to change because well, I've been listening to my friends and some people that want to go back to the field, go back to the country, to look for another way of living because we have seen that probably these urban societies are no longer sustainable, are no longer proper for living. But
Interesting
yes, well,
that you brought that up, because in the Philippines, so we have feudalism in large parts of the country, and one way to get out of that was for people to work abroad. But with this pandemic, hundreds of thousands of Filipinos are coming back. So at this point, it seems a little bleak. So so what? They go back to agriculture, and I don't know how much agriculture is still going on.
yeah.
For instance, Elbert, you're from the South. Is agriculture still what it used to be?
I think
I
I could
gather
say
a
it
lot of our
should.
food is imported.
Yes, but I think it should, because there are still vast lands in the Visayas area, particularly Western Visayas. And so I think the farmers and others, because of the pandemic, are going back to their farms. And I would like to mention, because we're talking about, farm and landscape, I'd like to talk about the landscape of the Holy Innocents, Jessica, because the director does not use establishing shot for the sake to establish the scene.
Yeah.
He shows
Okay.
an extreme long shots. He shows extreme long shots on situations wherein he wants to make a statement. When
Mm-hmm.
somebody runs in the forest,
Yes.
and the character is being shown as a silhouette, and the character goes up the mountain like it's a struggle, but it's also a foreboding that the character might be winning soon, because it's every time he goes up, it's always in a silhouette type. It's always caged or imprisoned by the trees.
Yeah.
This visual, the visual of the director and the cinematographer is really interesting for me. And Mike was correct, and Marina was talking about the beauty of the place, because I don't know how much of the place, Jessica, is still the same now, but
Mm-hmm.
he was able to capture the beauty of it, and it seems that the director is very organic the way he used the landscape. He's not just using the space for the sake of the space. You feel that they really live in the area. But one character really has that closeness to the environment, and that one is the owner of the bird that was
Yes.
Azaria.
Azarias. Yes.
Azaria.
Azarias. He's the one who is more attuned to the land. The rest are just living on it. He is the one really enjoying that. And
Yes,
yet,
he talks to birds.
Yeah.
yes,
Um,
yes,
although I will not forget the shot of him peeing on his hands as a form of moisturizer.
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
But I think that was a parang like an irony that to be the one who's really connected, you're really physically connected, and he deals with the manure, and it's nothing to
Mhm.
him, and he just appreciates nature.
Because these are the natural things. He is part of
Yeah.
nature, so he doesn't see it
Yes.
as being repulsive.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree.
Even
And then note
even
that the family seems to be especially connected to birds, because El Bajo, Paco, is also the best at hunting birds.
Yeah.
When he that's why his señorito cannot let him go even after his accident.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that was a metaphor for them, that the
Yeah.
birds were the
I think so
tenants
too.
themselves.
That even them are imprisoned. Freedom is a little bit far.
Yeah.
You cannot own everything.
Yeah.
That's true. And
But
whenever I'm watching a movie and I see a character connected to an animal, I begin to fear for the animal's life, because you know that something terrible is going to happen.
Yeah.
But Marina, you were saying something.
Yes, Delibes is one of the intellectuals in Spain who firstly started talking about ecology and about he was born in the 20s, in the 20th century, and he was one of the first people who started talking about how we were devastating the land, how we were devastating the planet. So I think Camus, the filmmaker, was really respectful for that philosophy and for that point of view. And the land is still like that, because Extremadura was a part of our country that wasn't really urbanized, wasn't really big industry never took place there. So you can still see that Mediterranean forest that is so so beautiful, and you can sense it when you see the film. So yeah, yes, you can still have that if you go there.
Yes, one of the elements in the film that is widely remembered and remarked upon are the performances, particularly of the actors playing Paco and Azarias.
Azaria.
Of course, Azarias is played by Francisco Rabal, who is one of the great Spanish actors. I guess he would be our Eddie Garcia, and then
I just googled him, and he really looks good. So good looking. So I was
Yeah.
shocked that he
yes, I saw
transformed.
him in,
His
character,
transformation.
in an earlier
Yeah,
Buñuel movie called
incredible.
Nazarene, and then of course he was also in Viridiana.
Viviana,
Yes.
yeah.
Mm.
So, what did you think of the particular style of acting of the characters? Because I found that even if they're playing really oppressed people, they still have a dignity about them. You don't have the self-pitying speeches that unfortunately we see in so many movies in this type. What did you think of the acting, Albert?
I really like it because it's so natural. It does not remind me of them acting. I mean, as if I was brought from my place to that particular land. And what I really like is that they don't speak a lot, and we just feel them rather than hearing lecture speeches or have pity on me. I really like it. But there was one particular scene which I really like, and it's a little bit Filipino esque. The character was sniffing dead birds, and he was, it's his ability that
Yeah.
he's actually a show off a little bit, but it's actually a very low form of doing things, and it reminds me
Where
because
he's crawling on the ground,
Crawling and
yeah,
sniffing
yeah,
tracking
like a
the
dog.
dead
yeah.
birds.
And he
Yes.
does it so naturally. It's not really overdone, and that's why I think both actors, both of them won at the Cannes Film Festival. It's one of those rare ties because the French don't like ties. So that one was really interesting for me, and the acting was really natural. I really, really was able to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes, and despite the way in which they lived, they were fairly stoic. In fact, the most disturbing thing that would happen on a regular basis is the screaming
The
of
screaming.
the sick
Yes.
child who I
Yeah.
figure has
Horrible.
cerebral palsy or
Uh-huh.
some sort of disability that kept her in the
Yeah.
house,
For me, I
immobile.
felt that was also a devices by the director. Like it's a primal scream for them, what they cannot say to their masters because they always
So
have to follow a certain.
she is
Like they
expressing
listen
what
here,
they
do
are
not talk.
holding in.
Yes, and then in the end, symbolically, the tiny girl dies, right?
Yeah.
And that's the end of their life. But I liked also. I agree with uh, Albert with the way the some acted in a most natural way that you did not feel there was any sermonizing or looking for pity. It's just
Yes.
how they lived, and it also felt real because you've experienced it. I mean, when you go out into the provinces and you meet these people, even despite their hardship, they still have some dignity for themselves, and then the gap between them and how the rich act is so accurate.
Yes.
Of course, the Filipino in me, I was expecting some interaction with like the son and the blonde
Exactly. What we were talking about
daughter, and
earlier,
say
where
maybe something.
there are many Filipino films set in the hacienda, but always a haciendero falls in love with a
Falls in
poor
love.
girl, or a haciendera
Yeah.
falls in love with a poor boy. And so half the time I was expecting, the
Yeah.
one that they took from the family and made into the maid,
Yes.
is she the one? But it's
Yeah,
interesting that
then-
in the film, it's the younger generation that manages to break away.
Yes.
The son by going into the army, and the daughter by going into a factory.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I wanted to say, for me, my opinion, as you have already said, the little girl, this able girl, is like the chorus in the tragedy, because you hear all this screaming, this horrible screaming, and they live with that. It's like that the tragedy is going to come, is going to happen, and this scream is like announcing it, because it's
Exactly,
horrible.
especially since it's so quiet where they are, and suddenly there's this screaming.
Yeah. Yeah, this is horrible. And the soundtrack of the film is really intense too. In the start, I don't know if you remember. The music is like abstract. It's it's really intense. It's not lyrical at all. So you can feel just from the beginning that something horrible, apart from their own lives, is going to happen.
Marina, I'm glad you mentioned about the soundtrack, because I noticed that it's like an one instrument music.
Yep.
And of course, I researched a little bit. Thank you, Wikipedia, and thank you, IMDb. The instrument used was a medieval instrument.
Yep.
And it's a decision by the director.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's very
So
rare.
I guess to emphasize that nothing has changed since the medieval.
Yes.
And
just to mention about the little girl, I wish the little girl is a character in the current situation in the Philippines, so that every time we fight, there's somebody shouts. You just need that. I'm sorry, Jessica.
I think so.
You just need that.
I think that would be useful. Yes, it reminds me of how, because we're in a pandemic and we want to avoid transmission. In Japan, people who ride roller coasters are discouraged from shouting. So the direction is, please scream inside your heart.
Yeah.
So,
how can you do that?
I feel that should be on a t-shirt. Yes. And it pertains not just to COVID, but to everything.
I live in a family compound, and I live with my brothers and sisters, and we've been locked down 100 plus days already. But there was one day I really had to scream. So that the scream of the girl, I did that one night because I couldn't take, all that was happening while there was a pandemic and the political
did it help?
atmosphere. It helped, actually. I actually also went out to break ceramic tiles because it's therapeutic. I think you should try it because it helps release.
Okay, note to self, break something. Yes, but it's interesting that so please go on. I interrupted you.
No, that's why I could relate to. I saw that was a device used by the director of the scream that they could not do to their masters, and in the end it was cut. So it's a pretty devastating.
Clever device.
Yeah, so many clever devices. There's one more before I forget. The photo in the opening. Remember the titles was it was just a slow fade in of the black and white photo. So I thought, it's a title card, but then it was introduced in the end. It's part of the film that they were captured in this particular moment where they were all together.
And again, the bird flew away during the time they want to take the second shot.
Yes, the second shot.
Have one shot in lab, only one shot.
Exactly.
Yes,
that they're together, they seemed happy or content, and then everything goes
all right. And the center of the social calendar in the hacienda seems to be the shooting parts that the señorito is so concerned with, where guests come in and they shoot birds according to the old style, where there are beaters and there are serfs to retrieve the dead birds and so on. And it's so important that not even Paco being in crutches, having broken his leg twice, is going to stop the señorito from ordering him to work. And so, in a way, the dead birds are more important than the serfs.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
this one main scene, Jessica, where instead of him going to the character, he asked him,
Yeah.
"Character,
Mhm.
I want to tell you something." And he
Yeah.
said, "What? Just get
Yeah.
difficult."
Exactly.
Very well.
I saw
Yeah,
that
and that
too, where
moment,
instead of
yeah,
him going to the man who cannot
I
walk,
wanted to whack that guy, you
Yeah.
know.
mhm,
Yeah. And remember that the wife is so fierce to help him because she doesn't want to help him for fearing the reaction of the señorito.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the poor man has to go to
Mhm.
Yes.
him in order to know what the hell is
It's a
he's
few
going to
steps,
tell
but
him.
you feel it.
Yeah, yeah.
and
And
there's
when
another scene. There's another scene where the señorito calls Paco, and I thought they were going somewhere, so I thought Paco was going to get into the truck, but
yeah,
no,
exactly.
he
Yeah.
rides
He rides on the
outside, hanging
side.
onto the door.
And
Yeah.
in one point, Paco admires the señorito, has a really strange relationship with him.
Hmm.
Because you remember at the beginning when he's telling his son that how he become a really good fighter and how
Yes,
he
yes.
could really get a lot of
Yeah.
shooting,
At
although he was
13 years
really young.
old.
And he
Yeah.
has
Hmm.
some
Mhm.
kind of dependence that is admiration. And this is like, come on. And this is very good, as Jessica said before, that the next generation has broken with all this and they don't want to be part of that. And this is
Well,
this is really nice and really the way both characters show that they won't be like their parents. I think this is really wonderful in the film as well as in the novel.
It's also
well,
happening here in
when
the Philippines. All the young people are not paying for the sins of the adults.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, they are
Right.
more vocal, like in the film
Yeah.
that they're.
Yes.
I remember that scene when the señorita said, "This guy, your son, is disrespectful. He doesn't say thank you.
Yes, I gave
He
him
does not
money and
accept.
he
I gave
refused
him
it.
money. Can you
Yes.
imagine? And he did not say thank you.
Yes.
And
But it was
it was
also,
inconceivable for
yeah,
them not to feel honored when they were actually
Hmm.
addressed by
yeah.
the boss.
But I
In
also felt
fact,
sorry, Jessica.
go ahead.
I also felt quite sad because not in the hacienda scenario, but I think that in politics, in Philippine politics, they have still have this patronage
Of course.
uh, politics, and it's still like that where your constituents are looking for masters to give dolats, or you have to thank them because they give you your jobs or your education. So
Yeah.
I felt a bit sad in the end that
The whole
still
EPAL system.
there's still a structure in that sense, and hopefully we break it. And you're right that it's really it's the youth who will save us.
Yes,
Is
and
the youth is
people my age and older, they keep harping about how millennials and Generation Z are whiny and can't do anything.
they,
But I feel that these are the people who are going
yeah,
to save us.
Yeah, true, true.
yeah.
Yes,
I
I think
agree with
and
that.
I think they're tired of us.
Yeah,
yes,
they
and
should be too.
to a large
It's of course
extent, we
being
have
tired.
failed them.
Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, in the film, the only soap opera element would be the wife who
Oh,
has an
wife.
affair
What's her name?
with the señorito. So is she also in the book? Because
Yeah,
she
yeah,
seemed to
yeah.
have wandered in from Dynasty and other soap operas of the 80s.
Yeah,
Including the costume, by the way.
yeah,
Exactly, and then
But
the shoulder pads, the lipstick, the hair. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And the
So
dialogue
was she
was
meant to
about
be a caricature?
Yes, I think the interclass sexual relationship is with the middle bro in the hacienda because the foreman who is in between the peasants and the señorito is the one who is to be, I don't know, mistreated by having to accept that his wife is going to sleep with the landlord. And
Right.
this actress, Agatha Lee, she was one of the sexy stars of the moment. So now she's also translated into something else, but carrying her own aura and her own sexual appearance into
Oh.
the cartoon.
Mhm.
So
And remember the scene where
knew that she was a sexy actress, as an actress that came from sexy comedy, and now she's playing
so
that role, but
that
in a different
informs the
role.
movie, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and remember the scene where the foreman asks everyone if they saw his wife leave in the car. Everyone is interrogated, and the foreman has to, swallow his pride and say, "Could she have been in the back seat, lying down, just to sneak out of the hacienda?" So.
Yeah.
Yeah, another memorable scene was the communion scene where they were giving a host, and then when it panned to the lady of the hacienda with all white and veil, it reminded me of Imelda Marcos with the rosary. And then she comes out in the balcony and waves, and they say they chant her name and give praise.
That one is very Filipino.
It's very Filipino and very Imeldific. So
and don't forget the church team, Mike, when they were giving communions, the photos are being taken.
Yes. I was wondering, what is that, a glitch?
Oh
yes,
documentation.
yes. So there is also, I guess the Catholic Church was also part of the elite system.
Oh yeah, because the Archbishop was there eating with them. And did you see how the Archbishop acts? One of those exaggerated moments when you ask everyone to kiss the hand.
Yes,
and at the towards the end of the line, he just goes like this.
Want to get rid of everything, like
God bless you.
Kiss the ring and then whatever. And one thing I learned when I went to Spain last year was that First Communion is really an important part of the social calendar again. As in, the children have to wear new clothes, white clothes, and there are parties in every house. Is it still the same in other parts of Spain, Marina?
This is for conservative people or people who are believers. It is still this social part, but well, that has to do with our different ideologies. I think that a lot of children don't have any Catholic education, and they don't even know what's all about the communion. So yes. But yes, if you are in regions where people are more Catholic, this is still like that. That's obvious. Yeah.
Let's take some questions.
Franco, sorry.
Go ahead.
After post dictator Franco, was there any form of land reform and the redistribution of land?
Not really. No.
Oh my.
So how did they balance it out? I mean, how did they emancipate?
The thing is that most of the people came to live in the cities and forgot all about. This is one, I don't know if you know the concept, Boy de Spain, that all the main lands where people work in the land are now without people. Only old people live there. All the younger, even people, I'm 50 years old, people even older than me, just their parents came to the cities, and we all this from this generation on, people were born in cities, most of the people. So there was like a void there. They couldn't afford making a land reform, because land or agriculture was no longer as important as before. And when Spain came into the European Union, they received a lot of help, a lot of support for land. So this was like a way of controlling the areas where still agriculture was important. In the south of Spain, it's still very important, especially for fruits and vegetables. We still export a lot of this kind of food to all European countries. So this is something to do with well, they control that, I think, with our getting
question. In the land that the characters were living on, what was the crop?
I think that this land is more, it's more with cattle, I think, and olive.
So they were raising cattle.
The main porks. Porks are one of the animals who are set in that area, and that's where Jamón Serrano, our ham comes from. This, especially this area, and the olive trees is the trees that you can see. And the encinas, I don't know the name from encinas in English. And this kind of Mediterranean forest is like the agriculture medium of this area.
But interesting you
so
mentioned
we have
about
some...
that, Jessica. Sorry. Interesting you mentioned about that because the film is actually have vast lands, and then there's really no crops. It's really interesting.
Yes. So I was wondering, where are the crops? And so we have a few questions from the audience. Teresa was bringing up something in connection to what you had pointed out about patronage. She says that we see this again in news reports of the local government units extending ayuda to the people who are affected by the pandemic, and you look at their faces and their gratitude, and it doesn't seem to factor in that it's their money. That and the local government units are only doing their job. They are not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. So
and the rules and regulations.
And then another question from the audience. Yes.
No, I was
Sorry,
mentioning about. Yeah, it's okay, Jessica. I mean, you were mentioning about the ayudas. And the rules they have to endure. They come from far places. These are old people. They have to fall in line. And then when they go there, please read the rules. Please fill up these forms. But it's their money. That's very interesting. That's just when I was watching the film last night. It really woke me up, even if I was so sleepy because I was shooting the whole night. It really woke me up and tells me the kind of things that's happening right now. It's so apt. Even if the film was 1984, and even if the times that they're trying to mention is really medieval times, I mean, all those old times, it's really the same. I mean, it's really heartening. Sorry.
We have a clarification from our audience. Encina is oak.
Okay.
Oak trees. Yes. And then an additional comment from Teresa, who commented before. She is a medical frontliner, and she has to line up to get her hazard pay, as if it was a favor that was a blessing that was being doled out to her. So really,
Niño.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder who's the Niño in the Philippines.
Yeah. Okay. I know, Albert, who's the Niño.
We all have our candidates. Yes. And so it was pointed out in our comments that Mario Camus has done many adaptations of literary works. Could you mention some of these film adaptations that he has done? I remember seeing one called La Colmena, which is based on a novel by Camilo José Cela.
We have this. Yes, in this period, in the 80s, he was a really well-known director, and he shot a lot of these art films that were backed by the government. And La Colmena was one of the other. There is a good thing to point out, I think, that the use of these traditional actors into something different was really notorious at the time. The La Colmena, in the High, the La Colmena happens the same. That all the well-known actors and actresses from the popular films in the 50s, some of them of the 50s, some of the 70s, were playing some other actor, some other characters, some other situations, and that was wonderful because it was a way to show that the industry was prepared to do something else, and this Camus was really important for this in that period. He also shot Fortunata and Jacinta by Galdós.
Right.
A television series, and also a special edition for films. So he was really a remarkable filmmaker for making this adaptation as a way of making art films, as I said before. Yeah.
One interesting film he shot was La Casa de Bernarda Alba, but it's from a play. It's not from
the Lorca. Yes.
Lorca.
Yeah, but that one is really interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
Are any of his films available commercially? Are they streamed or
on Netflix?
or this particular film, has it been restored? I think it deserves a full
restoration. Yes.
That one actually, it's listed.
It's a pity because yes, in the whole program of this month, the version of the Holy Innocents is the worst of all. Sorry, because the other day, the spirit of the beehive and the ones to come are in a really good condition, comparing with the Holy Innocents. But yes, well, the best version is obviously the cinema version that we could show. If we could have a screening in a cinema, we could manage to make a special venue and show it there.
I just want to ask Marina about that. You mentioned that law for adaptation, that they created a law that mandated, not mandated, but encouraged filmmakers to adapt.
Yeah.
So how did that work out? How did you incentivize?
Yes, who chose the books that could be adapted?
Yes.
Well, it was like the canon of the best writers like Lorca, Cela, Galdós, Delibes. It was a mixture of the 19th century best novelists and the best middle part of the 20th century novelists. In this case, Los Santos Inocentes, the novel was such a success. It was something that really astonished everything, that it was like logical to make an adaptation of the film. But I suppose I suppose the producers chose whatever they wanted to shoot, and they get support from the government to make it.
So in form of incentives or
yeah. The law was really specific about art films, so they have a best support from the government at that period. And this 80s, this period in the 80s is like one of our golden eras in the Spanish cinema.
And was the Holy Innocents a hit when it was shown in movie theaters?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Both things, both the novel and the film was a really big success.
Very
I
good.
think that people were very committed with culture, because we had a really young democracy, and people, especially Middleborough people, wanted to get culture, participate in the cultural moment. So it was a really good moment because the government was prepared to support that kind of culture, and people were avid, were really eager to see.
So it can happen because, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, because you mentioned that prior to this, most Spanish audiences were watching sexy films, and this is what their fare was. And then somebody just decided, let's
do literary adaptations.
Yeah, and that has been like our problem for how many years. So it can be done. It's just maybe there's resistance.
Thanks to the internet, now it's being stopped. I mean, because of the internet, now we have less of that in the movies.
Yeah.
Although the irony is that there are a lot of Filipino films being made about social injustice, other social issues, but they seem to be made for foreign film festivals. So foreign cineasts have access to good Filipino films that about social issues, while when they're shown in local theaters, because I guess there's either no interest or there's very little promotion, they quickly disappear.
Yeah.
I think
So what do we do to get people to watch
Yeah.
films like this made by Filipinos about the Philippines?
But I think there's many films right now, Jessica, that's tackling social issues, but just not social realism. They're doing sci-fi, they're doing horror, and I like it because the issues are blended inside the stories, within the characters. It's just that it's not marketed well. So I think the
Yes.
pandemic right now has actually flattened the monopoly of many distributors.
Yep.
Because right now,
Exactly.
during the pandemic, every filmmaker is putting their films online. And now
Yes, so
nobody is
it's
advertising.
sort of even now. It's
Yes.
even in that no one is making money.
Yeah, even my underground films that nobody watched, now people are watching. I mean,
Right.
I've offered them. So it's very interesting, this pandemic. I don't think I like it, but it's helping the filmmakers who does not have money to market their films and who does not have a TV station or a radio station. So everybody now goes to the net and it's an even playing field, more or less.
Yes, and we have a question from the audience for Albert. Can you please suggest films online that the audience should look up?
I mean, with similar themes?
Well, just films that they may not have heard of, but are essential.
Oh my, I mean, I should have brought my list. There's a lot. I mean, the whole, I just want to share, I mean, the whole pandemic, before I used to go to Facebook because whenever there's traffic, I have to post something. Whenever I'm waiting for a client, I have to post something. Now, I'm off Facebook. I don't even have a profile picture anymore because I'm busy watching films. Finally, I have time to watch films. And they should look for, if I were them, they can go to movie.com. There's a subscription, but you can watch really obscure films, foreign films over there. Or you can go Netflix, because that's the way everybody is. It's only 140 pesos. I'm not promoting, I'm just saying. There's iFlix and there's many others. You just have to type the film. And you know, sometimes Jessica, Marina, and Mike, sometimes it's even in YouTube illegally.
Exactly.
It's just there. So my suggestion is, why don't you go to IMDb and type the best drama film or the best African films or the best Spanish films? It's going to give you a list. Type that in Google and it gives you the link, because it's really hard for me to give a list right now in just how many seconds. That's my suggestion.
Yes, for instance, one of our best known Filipino filmmakers at the moment, best known in places like Cannes and Venice, is Lav Diaz, and his films are seldom shown here because it's an economic proposition. The theaters don't want to give him 10 hours for a single screening. But now that everyone is at home, now you have time to watch his movies online. And I know that the documentary Aswang is also currently showing online.
Free.
Yes.
Yeah. For 2 days.
Mike, do you have any recommendations? Anything you've discovered online lately?
Well, what I usually do is, I look for films that are related to the current projects that I'm doing. So right now I'm doing research for the Battle of Manila, what the massacres, and because my father, who recently passed on, survived the battle in Paco, Manila. And he survived for 13 days with 13 family members hiding behind a 3-foot wall along Singalong. So I got so immersed about
yes, and the thing is, the Battle of Manila is such an important part of our history, and
nobody knows about it.
Nobody knows about it. It's just bonkers. In fact, we are singular in being cut off from our own history, even recent history. No?
Yes. I recently watched on Netflix Anne Frank Parallel Stories. It's about the lives of these 4 first-person survivor testimonies about the same age as Anne Frank. And then the thread is with a young millennial girl trying to discover how can I relate. So it's wonderfully
Is this the one
made.
by Helen Mirren, Mike?
Yes, it's beautiful. And going back to the Battle of Manila, so I'm looking at all these nostalgic, not necessarily narrative films, but newsreel footage of old Manila. And Manila was really beautiful pre-war, how the city looked like. And but even during my research, I found that there was already a class structure, that Ermita was the center of the elite. Tondo has forever been the center for the laborers. And then you had Paco, Central Manila, as the center for the middle class.
Tondo, where the founder of the Katipunan, Andres Bonifacio, was from.
Yeah. And that was the site of one of the first massacres in the Battle of Manila, where the Japanese bayoneted over 400 men, women, and children, and nobody knows about it. And I Google Earth the location. They're going to make a condominium over the site. There's no historical marker, so that's really sad. So that's my current
I would like to
now.
know how many students of LaSalle know about the LaSalle massacre.
Yeah, the LaSalle massacre. I don't know.
Yes, and so we get our history in dribs and drabs. And an interesting factoid I picked up from reading a novel was that Primo de Rivera, the Spanish dictator, was here during the Philippine Revolution against Spain.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Wow. I don't know if it's fictional, but it's in Gina Apostol's novel, which I'm reading now. I said, okay, connections. So,
yeah. Wow.
And of course, Davis of Davis Cup was also in the Philippines during the American occupation.
Was, Governor General.
But that one,
he started the Davis Cup.
Yeah. So I think we're running out of time. Next week, the screenings on Saturday and Sunday are another film by Victor Erice called El Sur, the South. This is the movie that followed El Espíritu de la Colmena, or The Spirit of the Beehive, which I hope everybody watched because it's gorgeous. Beautiful. And I just realized that Victor Erice only made 3 films only completed 3 films, making him even more Terrence Malick than Terrence Malick. So thank you very much for joining us. Okay. Any parting words? Anything that you'd like to anything you'd like to remind us of? Marina, Albert, Miguel. Albert, when will the Bakunawa Cinema of the Young go online?
We start in September, we hope. And because we're gathering other films, we want to feature old films from other editions in the past. It's our 8th year this year. So we want to show that. We are having Cine Kasimanwa in December. That's the Western Visayas Film Festival. And and they should watch out for more of my obscure personal films, because it's
and also interestingly, I just saw a meme about Siquijor being the only COVID-free province in the Visayas, and of course, you know, the joke is that it's because of the aswang of the mythological creatures who still inhabit the place.
Do you have a website, Albert? Or you can see your films?
Facebook, you can just type Bakunawa Cinema of the Young and Cine Kasimanwa. Spelled as pronounced.
And Mike, what's going on with your zombie graphic novel?
Okay, that's my cue.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a project.
How would you render that in English?
In English, the translation roughly is "Death be damned." To the death. It's set in a hacienda. It happens all in one night. It's about a group of reporters who gate crash the party of the elite, and then they're overrun by zombies who happen to be the peasant farmers. So we're wrapping up. It started in 2014. We started with 2 issues. Now
and there's no lack of material from real life that you can adapt into zombie horror, no?
particularly excited because this is the last two issues now. We were supposed to release this year, but we might release it online. We're supposed to get a physical release.
May I order?
Yeah, yes. Go
Yes,
on
where can we get it?
Facebook, Patay Kung Patay. There's a shop button. And my only advice to everyone is it's okay to scream once in a while.
Okay.
Yes.